is we'll do the recording and then I'll stop it and then we can talk in case you have questions, comments that you don't want on the recording. Yeah, so today is the intro to TimeLine. We're going to start talking about TimeLine. And, the song I played there, it was mainly for the one line. Does anybody really know what time it is? Because this is what TimeLine's about, how your brain sorts and loses time. I know some of the people in the NLP/hypnosis world love TimeLine. One guy made basically his whole career out of it, which is cool. I just kind of introduce it and talk about it a little bit. I find it fascinating and I use it. I've just never broke it down the way I'm going to break it down in the next couple weeks. But today is just kind of an intro, give you some things to play with and to do and have some fun with it. So let's just jump in. TimeLine intro. Here we go. Ta-da! I'm going to be fancy because I care. I feel your pain. So TimeLine intro. I do not call it TimeLine therapy. I think the guy still he's gone now, but the company he had protects it. I don't know what's going on with my computer. I may have to. Is it getting a glitch on your screen, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, let's try. Let me change.
Yes. You're deciding whether to go gray or not.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of days. Let me stop the share.
Will, I am that gap that's in your background.
Is that doing it?
You have I think that may be confusing the overlay of your background that you're trying to use in Zoom itself. Okay. So if you don't have that gap there's a little wedge I can still see with your green screen and what you have behind it.
Okay.
If you can get rid of that, it might stop flickering, but there's no guarantee.
All right. I'll just do it this way. This way works.
Don't forget to turn the recording back on.
Oh, it's still on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me let these people in. So anyway, TimeLine. Here we go. It's kind of an intro into TimeLine. And let's just have some fun with it. That's basically what it's about. And here we go. So as always, I always start this with my contact info, nfnlp.com. Dr. Will at Real NLP on Twitter, Instagram, Dr. Will Horton, and on Facebook, a couple of different places. So let's just jump in and have some fun. And as we start this, the other thing I do is ask people as you get ready to take this, think about what can I learn new today? How can I apply this info? How can I use it? Right? Both personally and professionally, right? Both personally and professionally. How can I enjoy this class? So TimeLine, it's interesting concept, a lot of false assumption. I think it's vastly misunderstood. But basically start with a quote by a professor, basically saying, we really know nothing about perceived, remembered, known, or imagined time. When you remember something that you did last night or last week or last year, you're consciously aware not only that the event happened and that you were there either as a participant or observer, kind of part of your episodic memory, but also that it happened like yesterday, last week, that whenever it was last year. Basically a time that is no more, right? So the question we are asking is, how do you know what happened at a time other than now? And like the song said, do you really know what time it is? Because you're, again, one of the rules of the hypnosis NLP world, which seems to be true, is, and my bird screams, don't worry about it. Your mind doesn't know the difference between a real or a vividly imagined event, right? So let's just have some fun with this, right? But what is TimeLine? Well, TimeLine is a concept of how your brain sorts and uses time. basically past, present, future. You know, we've been trained to, in the current culture, to use time, right? And if you've ever been around native cultures, they have a different concept of time, because basically, you know, in a native culture, it may not be that important about it being noon. You know, you have day, you know, it's just a different time, you know, and it may go more seasonal. I mean, it just gets interesting, right? This whole breaking time down the way we have is rather new in the evolutionary concept of us, right? But your brain can adapt. It can adapt. It does adapt. And we just went through one here in the States and a lot of the world where, you know, where we fall back in time. And of course, we spring ahead in time. And how long does it take to adjust to that, even that 1 hour shift, right? Or if you've ever traveled internationally, you get jet lag, and your brain has to adapt to the different times, right? But your brain, it may take a little while. So it's just a concept that we use, right? And basically the basics of timeline is, to make it very simple, you have a way of looking at time where you look through time. That's the line that's going like this, right? Yeah, that's the line that's going like this. Or if the line goes through you, that's in time. So do you look through time, or do you look in time, right? And we're going to play with it. I'm just going to introduce it, and then we're going to do some things with it. And it's not as easy as like this way or straight through you. How you think about time is as varied as people are, right? It could be much different than a set way about how your brain uses time, right? And your time can change by context, you know, by what you're doing. But let's just look at it this way. So you have through time, where you're like out of your time, like you're seeing everything, your present, your past, your future. And it doesn't matter which side for what we're doing, right? Or for another bunch of people, your past is behind you, you're in the now, or your present, and the future goes off in front or up. So let's just do just a general one, and then we'll begin to kind of just look at it and play with it a little bit. And the easiest way is think about something you do every day, just kind of general, like, you know, you brush your teeth, you shave, whatever it is that you do it every day. So imagine yourself doing it today. So it's in the current time, as we would call it. So it's today. So you can close your eyes and imagine it. Now, what I'd like you to do is think back a while ago, a few months ago, maybe summertime, and you were doing the same thing, getting ready. So it's not an emotionally charged event. You're just doing something rather neutral, and see yourself in that. So it's the past, maybe this summer. Now think ahead into the future. Could be a few weeks, like Christmas, or maybe there's something you're going to something that you can look forward to into the future, and you can see yourself getting ready for that. Right? Good. Now see all three images or feelings at the same time. And where is your past? Is it off to one side? Right? Where is your present? And where is your future? Right? Let me stop the share for a moment. So for a lot of you, where is your past? Is it off to one side? Right? Where is your present? Right? And where's your future? Off to the front or off to the side, right? So it may change by, you know, it's just like your past, and you can see the now, the future's over here. And I don't really, a lot of people go whether right or left, past, present. It's just your future's off to one side. You're kind of either in in the present, or you can see it right in front of you, and your future goes off to the other side. And the only real difference is, excuse me, is it if you're in the timeline, if you're in the present, right? Now there are some generalities that I don't like talking generalities. Now I'm going to spend a lot of time talking generalities, but generally, if you're in the moment and your past is behind you or off to one side behind you, and you're in the moment, you have a tendency to run late, right? Because you lose track of time very easily. You get caught up in what you're doing. Even though intellectually, I always use the example, it's a 30-minute drive. I got plenty of time. And the next thing you know, oh my God, I've got 10 minutes to get there, and it's a 30-minute drive, right? That's the kind of people that can always run late and just get carried away with time. And generally, another generality, people that are in time are more spontaneous. You can just have fun. You can go do things, right? It's not hard for you to change plans, pivot quickly, right? That's just a couple of generalities. If you're through time, so you're seeing through times, past is off to one side, present's like right in front of you, future goes off to the other side. It generally means you do a little bit better with time. Not saying you might not run late, things like that. It's just you have a better grasp of time. But the downside to it, if a generality, is it's hard for you to be spontaneous, right? Hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Nothing good. Let's take off. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And you're like, I can't. Why not? You said you're not doing anything. Yeah, but I didn't plan it. Or you have a plan, even if it's a soft plan, and then something changes it, it drives you nuts. Anybody got that? It's like, you messed with my timeline. I was going to do this. I was going to do that. I was going to do this. I mean, I think we all do that. Some mornings I'll get up, I'll tell my wife what's going on. Okay. She says she'll do the horse. I'll go, great. And I'll start doing something. Then 10 minutes later, she'll say, nah, you go do the horse. I'm like, God damn it. And it's like, I got plenty of time. I don't have, it's like, I don't have a call or a client till 11. It's like, why does it bother me? Right? Because I'd laid it out. I had laid it out, and it didn't, does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody else have that kind of stuff? Right? Does anybody have where you're in the moment? Any in time people? Right? Okay. I'll ask Miss Carrie and then Miss Carla to unmute. Do you have a tendency to run late?
Yes, always.
No,
Always.
I don't. Never.
Okay. You don't, but
No.
generally it may not always be, right? But are you more spontaneous? Can you be spontaneous?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Very
So it depends. It depends.
Yeah.
Uh,
I get bored with routine, so I love spontaneity.
okay. Well, yeah, but if people that like routine,
Mhm.
it's like this. One of the people on our call had just went to an interesting part of his life where his routine got changed after damn near 40 years, something like that, I guess, right? And he was in a very structured time environment, right? The US military, 0600 is 0600. It's not like when you get there. Right?
Well, just to set the record straight on time, early is on time, and on time is early, and on time is late. You never be caught late for a movement.
Yes. Well, it's like there was what was that guy's? He was a football coach, and he got that from his time. I guess he spent a lot of time in the military, but Coughlin was his name. And when players would go to his team, it took them a while to realize that the 8 o'clock meeting, if you weren't there at 7:55, you were late. And he
Whoa.
wanted to fine you, right? And it was, unwritten rule, all this other stuff, right? But it's just the way he thought. If you walked in at 8, you were late, even though it was an 8 o'clock meeting, And so it was, people have that, right? Like you just get used to it, right? And then all of a sudden, right? So what is your time? How do you use time? And those are some generalities. But much like in the NLP world, we're familiar with visual, auditory, kinesthetic, right? And then when people first learn it, they run around going, I'm a visual, or I'm an auditory, I'm a kinesthetic. No. You're all of them. You have one, or you usually have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary, so to speak, right? And you might be able to use all of them very easily, right? But you usually have a general one, so you're not any one of anything. So when it comes to timeline, it is the same thing. Your time changes. This is something I think that we kind of overlook, right? So, and it could be more by context, by what you're doing, right? You may be very linear in one part of your life and much more spontaneous and flowing in another part of your life. Not everyone, right? But we usually talk about certain activities change your timeline, right? Usually things like sports, dancing, and certain hobbies will change your timeline, right? Your timeline changes by maybe what you're doing. And we can see if this is true. And the easiest way to do that, I don't know why my thing clicked off, is I'd like you to think about this. And so close your eyes and think about work. Think about work, whatever you're doing for a living, right? Or, your work, however you describe your work. If nothing else, for a lot of us, taking a class and step into work, right? So imagine doing a work-related activity today, right? Good. Now kind of step out of that. Now step into the past and think of a work-related activity in the past, right? A work-related activity in the past. So maybe you were taking a class, you were at a conference, you were at whatever you were doing, working with a certain client, but it's in the past, right? And now step out of that. Now step into the future. You're going to be going to a conference, taking a class, teaching a class, working with a certain client in the future. So let your brain just get kind of creative. When it comes to work, where is the past? Where is the present? Where is the future? Right? Does it change at all? Right? And now open your eyes, close your eyes, and now think about something you do for fun, something that's like a hobby, a passion, playing golf, working out, dancing, watching a really good movie, right? Where it's something in a different context of your life, right? And again, see it today. So think about if you're doing that activity today, if you were going to do that activity today, and think back a while ago when you were doing that activity and step into that experience. Good. And now step out and step into the future and imagine doing that experience in the future. And again, now kind of drift out and see all three at the same time: the past, the present, the future. And then compare and contrast, as we would say. Is there a difference between how you think about time when it comes to work versus how you think about time when it comes to like a hobby or like sports or working out? is there a difference? Right. And let's add one more. Right. What about family time? When you're with your family and now your brain can begin to adapt, is your family time, how you think about time, different than your work or even a hobby kind of time? Good. Good. All right. Open your eyes. Did anybody have a slightly different thing about how their work is versus like something they do in their spare time, a hobby, a passion? Anybody have? Quiet group. Danae!
Work.
I knew you were going to call on me. My whole timeline is changing. So when we did timeline in the class just over the weekend, my past was off to the left kind of diagonally, and my future had moved. It used to be off to the right diagonally, and it changed to directly in front of me. And it's interesting because today, as you're doing this, my past is it's like it's moving. It's kind of getting closer to being directly behind me. And when you did all three, it was all becoming straight in time, which was really cool, right?
Okay.
You know, and it was neat when you said, you know, my kids just left I became an empty nester in December. And so when I would remember things that I did with my kids, the timeline was still there off to the left diagonally. But when I would think about work, it was directly behind me. So it was neat to see it move. That was really cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bruce, you were going to say something?
So yeah, fun stuff was my past was to my right, my future was to my left and the center. Work became more behind me and forward. The real interesting thing is I said, think about family. I thought about two different things of family. Painful family was behind me. Family that I enjoy, the past was to my right.
Okay. Cool.
That is so wild. That happened to me too, Bruce. There was a dark void and then not. And I thought that was just me because of the past, you know. See, I'm even showing like it's over there.
Right.
But yeah, that happened. That's so wild.
Cool. Miss East. You got to unmute. You're saying brilliant stuff, but oy vey, take the time, click on a button. That was a combination Italian Jewish bad accent, so I apologize.
Jewish man. Oh my God, you're so cute. I'm having a tough time grasping this concept. For me, nothing changed as far as direction. My past is always my past, my present, my future's ahead of me. And whether it's work, family, whatever, it's always the same. So I don't understand why it would change. The only thing that changed for me is when I thought about family, whether it was past, present, or future, it was brighter and bigger because my family is so close and we laugh hilariously whenever we're together. We just carry on. So it was bigger and brighter and more exuberant, but past, present, and future never changes. So what is the meaning of when it changes direct? Oh, you don't.
I don't know. It's just.
All that for nothing?
Well, I asked Horton the same question during our class, and he brought it, you know, he asked me a question. He said, are you taking more charge of your life? Are you taking more charge of your future? And that was a yes. So I think maybe for me, and there was a big shift, right? Like I went from having kids living with me to not. So the way I use my time changes as well. So maybe that makes a difference.
Well, yeah. And our language, since we're neurolinguistics, right? Our language, buried in our language is use of timeline. You need to just put that shit behind you. And people say that, right? It's like, just put that shit behind you. Put it out of your mind. What the hell does that mean? Well, you're right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people are better at it. Other people, you know, and again, like a lot of experiences, and I always say this with trauma, the event is irrelevant. It's how you remember the event. It's how your body remembers the event, right?
Right.
One person may be a horrible traumatic experience. Another one goes, yeah, that sucked.
Right.
And then they just, and it's just, this is just some interesting thing, and it might change a little bit, right? Let me bring back up my screen. Yeah, so it might work. I mean, it might just move around a little bit, right? And so, but once you get exposed to it, you can change your timeline. It seems like it, and again, people always, when I've seen people teach this, and then people start asking, well, should I change my timeline? Is this one right or wrong? I don't know. Is your life working okay? If it's working okay, don't change it. If you're in a shit show, you might want to think about seeing what's going on with it, right? Or, and what's going on. But a lot of time, I always introduce the out of time experiences, right? It seems like this experience is not in its place, right? So if you're 50 years old, if something happened at 25, it should be in your past somewhere, right? But it may be right here or right there. I mean, it's out of time, and it could be a good experience. It could be a resource that you use, right? Graduating college, getting a degree, getting your, whatever it is, learning a skill. It's here, birth of your first child, right? Or any child, birth of a child, right? Your wedding day, and that could be a resource or a problem, depends on where you're at in that situation, right? In my case, depends on which wedding. But it could be it's out of time, right? And I said that this weekend. I always tell the example, and it's an older TV show now. I got to find a better example, but the classic, brilliantly Shakespearean TV show, Married with Children, right? And Al Bundy, who is a shoe salesman. His life sucks, right? Married, it's a shit show. There's no other term for it, right? But he scored 4 touchdowns in his high school homecoming football game his senior year. And that's like the highlight of his life. And there was an episode where he's talking about, his hands go like this, and he's talking about scoring the touchdowns and the cheers and the crowd, and it's all right here. And his wife just kind of says, Al, that's in the past. You need to let it go. I'm just paraphrasing. But he does, it's brilliant acting, by the way. He goes, but if you take this away from me, Peg, I got nothing. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what, and he uses it when he needs to cheer himself up. Now that's a good thing, right? So it could be okay. And again, like we know people that like peak in high school. Anybody know somebody that might peak? They peaked in high school or college or whenever it is, right? And they can't move on from it, right? But what if it's a problem that's out of place? And you'll hear people use words like, that experience colored everything that happens to me. What the hell does that mean? If you step back, you're like, if you just start, what does that mean? That means that experience is always close to protect you, right? So does this if it's an out of time experience, is it a resource or a problem? Does it make you feel better or feel worse, right? And at the base level, it might be about survival. I share the story because it's the best example I've ever had about the lady that was having anxiety attacks and ended up in the hospital a couple of times, and her health was fine. And of course, the ER doc, after I think the 3rd time, told her, it's all in your head. You're crazy. Your heart is fine. Go see a shrink. And sometimes that's how ER docs talk, right? And so she's freaking out, and I'd helped her lose weight. So she calls me up, and could I help her with anxiety? I'm like, okay, I guess. Come on in. We'll see what happens, right? Of course, when she first called, I thought maybe she put weight on or something. But no, it was, so she came in, we started talking. And basically the synopsis is she was senior vice president of a small bank that was being taken over or they sold to a big bank. And so her and her boss had to work on certain things after people left. So everybody, I don't know what it is. I don't know banking. I don't know rules, but they were keeping stuff quiet while these changes were happening. And in the evening, she would start having anxiety attacks and she would end up in the hospital. And I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to figure it out, and then she does the magic thing of, I know it's not this, but, and I'm like, what? She goes, well, when she was in high school, about the age of 16, she worked at an ice cream place. And what happened at the ice cream place? It was summer. She's working there, probably like going into her senior year or whatever it was. And anyway, the guy that owned the ice cream parlor owned several businesses. He was one of the local, very successful people. And so his son was home from college before his senior year in college. So he's what, 21-ish, right?
Mhm.
So he's managing the ice cream place, like for, helping his dad. So he's getting that. So anyway, she goes, yeah, he was a cute guy, and they would be flirting and doing this, and they would start, making out, doing stuff, 16-year-olds do, and even 21. Anyway, one night they're doing that, and he ends up raping her. Right. And I go, okay. I go, well, what happened? And she goes, nothing. Did you report him? Of course not. Right. This was back in the 70s. And she goes, because if I were reported it, first thing, they'd make me out to be the bad guy. What did you do to deserve that? Are you leading him on? And she comes from a very low middle class family. And this guy's family was rich in the area. So some people would say you're trying to catch a rich guy, or why do you want to ruin his life? I mean, no, it's just like, she goes, so I didn't do anything. I said, okay, what do you mean? And she goes, well, I worked there the rest of the summer. As did he. And I said, really? She goes, yeah, it's like it was never happened, and as soon as, but she refused to close the ice cream shop, right? She would always get out of there before. And of course he let her because he didn't want anything. Anyway, so now fast forward, whatever it is, 30, 40 years, and she's working in this bank. And every time it would start to get dark and all the other employees would be gone, and they're beginning to do the things, right? Her anxiety would come up, and eventually, they'd call the ambulance and she'd go to the hospital. Okay, great. And I said, but then her hand went like this. She goes, yeah, that event is, she goes, it's, I can think about it like it was yesterday. And I forget which side her hand went, but her hand went up, right? Because people will show you and tell you what their brain is doing. So I said, okay. And so we began, I said, I asked her about, in today's world, would it be different if someone was attacked? She goes, of course. There's still some of the victim shaming, but it's not like it was. Things have changed. What would you do different? Plus the guy she worked with was probably in his 60s, and different time, different place. She knew that. I said, so, well, the good news is your brain has this protective mechanism that's going to keep you safe at all costs. She goes, oh, okay. I said, the bad news is next time it may actually give you a goddamn heart attack. Because it could do it. I mean, you could freak yourself out into a heart attack, right? And she's just like looking at me. So we talked about it. We did a couple things, kind of a fast phobia technique, had her look at the experience, realize that was then, this is now. It's a different time. Thank her subconscious mind for doing that. Keep the idea of keep your awareness up, keep your, your, as Billy would say, your existential threat mechanism up so you can look at the world, but put that experience in the past, right? So that's kind of an out of time experience. It could be positive, it could be negative, right? But we all have some of them, right? Yeah, keep your radar up, right? You don't turn your radar off, right? But anyway, so it's like, that's just out of time experiences. So we all have those, right? And as this is just the intro, we're not going to do much with it, right, today. But when you think about it, I also want to introduce something I think what we're seeing happen in the world. And it's a version of dyschronometria, right? It's in the technical term, when you have it badly, it's your brain malfunction where you can't accurately estimate the amount of time that is elapsed or passed, right? It's a distorted time perception, right? It's associated with a certain thing, but basically it's like time does not matter, right? And now that we're starting to come out of COVID, I think we're seeing people experience where time's coming back online. For many people, for a long period of time, did it matter that it was whatever time it was? You know, I mean, one of the big things they're talking about, like this shortage of workers, right? And that people don't want to go back to the office. And, you know, I was talking to my daughter, she goes, well, she's worked from home for years. She's a cybersecurity expert. And somebody offered her a different job at a different company, a lot more money. And she goes, but the money they're offering is not worth the fact that I'd have to actually go to work every day. I mean, go to the office, you know, because she can roll out of bed, get a cup of coffee, you know, and a lot of it, the camera's not even on. She's just fixing tech issues, right? And she lives in the beautiful Washington, D.C. area, right? So just trying to get to where the office is of this company, she's like, you're talking on a good day, an hour drive there and an hour drive back, right? And she goes, so the hour there, the hour back, the hour, lunch, you get lunch, the wear and tear on her car, all the other stuff. She goes, I'll take less money to work from home, right? And they were saying that that's probably one of the disconnects between a lot of these people wanting people to go back to the office and don't believe that people are quitting their job, taking a little less money to stay at home, right? To work for a different company where it's like, or at least flex time, where I don't have to go in every day, you know? And so it's just that, but we've been thrown into that time didn't matter. And when the lockdown first happened with COVID, right? And they shut down, a lot of things shut down. A lot of the weird kind of things we keep track of time by, like kids going to school, the breaks at school, television. You know, if you had a favorite television show and they kind of cut it short because production was stopped. If you're a big sports fan, they stopped sports for a while. So it's like, you had no sense of time. Right? And so now it's coming back online, and it's like, I heard one person describe it after we were talking about it, go, yeah, it's like I've been in jet lag for about 18 months. If you've ever had jet lag, it's like you're not quite there, but you're there. You can go through the motions. You know, when I was blessed to go to Asia a lot, like 3 or 4 times a year, it was like terrible. That's all I can say. Getting there was easier because I'd usually get there, take a day, start work. Coming home, my wife would say, you weren't worth a shit for 4 or 5 days when you first got home, right? Because I just, it's like, this is this dyschronometria, right? So I just wanted to introduce that, right? Now, next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about it. But what if you access a state that makes you feel great, a resource state, an event in your life that maybe you really accomplished a goal? There's an NLP technique I do usually in the master. It's called success track, where you think about successes in your past, right? And that's basically what we're doing, right? I'm going to have you, but I just want you to think about a success state, right? Whatever it is, maybe you accomplished a goal, worked with a client, closed a deal, whatever it was, and it makes you feel good. And what if you take that experience and put it right above where you're at right now? So it's always there for you to draw from, right? And keep it there so you can always draw from it, right? Now, what if you have any problems or times in your life that comes back and haunt you, right? What if you begin to put that back in its proper place? And the way that one might jump out, if not you, you've probably had clients where every time something goes wrong, even though it's just an event that goes wrong, it's like, I suck, I'm horrible, I'm stupid, I can never do it. And you're like, you made a mistake. It was no big deal, but it's like, no, it's me. You know, it's like they take it on, right? And so what if you began to take those kind of experiences and put them in the past where they belong? Just because I failed this in high school doesn't mean it's going to affect me today. You know, doesn't mean it's going to affect me today. You know, I forget the guy's name. It's a male writer, and he's been quite successful across genres. And he always proudly tells people it was either his sophomore or junior year in high school he flunked English, right? Because his teacher told him he didn't know how to write. And he's had, like, 10 bestsellers, things turned into movies. It's like, no, I think, and he goes, and somebody said, well, that could have haunted a lot of people. And he goes, just something. He goes, I remember I was 16 and I looked at her and thought, well, if you were any good, why are you teaching high school as a writer? Because she was so anyway. And so what if you put problems where they should be in the past, right? And then even, separate out parts of the problem, which we'll do next week. So that is kind of let me stop the share, the overview of the intro to TimeLine. Just, you could begin to play with it, right? And see how people use it, see how you use it, what's going on in your life, what are some experiences that change it. And then, of course, we have those other things. You ever had an experience where time seemed to stop? Time froze, right? Could be good, like you fall in love, right? It could be bad. If you've gone through a horrible experience, it just drags on and on. So it's like, but your time changes, right? And you can, the good and the bad, right? So just think about how your time changes. Are you experiencing some different time changes as we're going on now? So I'm going to stop the recording. Hold on.